Okay, thank you. I'm going to do something sort of off-piste today. I had the opportunity of giving this presentation yesterday, and at the end of the presentation, we ran out of time with the questions. And I was listening to the questions, and I think I could summarize all the questions with just one statement. I hear what you say, but I'm in a regulated industry. What can I do? Okay? And I felt I would be going against everything I believed in if I disregarded those questions. So I've thrown my presentation away. And what you're going to hear is not something completely different, but something which at least lets me believe that I was listening to the questions yesterday. So if you did hear me yesterday and you see me doing something different, at least you know why. Okay, to begin with, right, the idea of having open adaptive platforms in enterprise doesn't make any sense unless we have a reason why. And there are many ways I can describe that why, but I'm going to start with talking about Kodak and Polaroid. Okay? Kodak was a world leader in what it did. It defined the Kodak moment as an instant of photography, had the smartest people in the room, had the smartest people in the world working for them, dominated the industry, and about a year ago reached the last chapter of a long saga of bankruptcy to render itself into just a set of patents for people to pick out. They defined digital while they did that. A second company, Polaroid, slightly younger than Kodak, did pretty much the same thing. They dominated the industry, had the smartest kids on the block, invented, defined the instant camera, and then went their weary way to bankruptcy about a year ago. Now, companies come and companies go. Natural selection takes place in industry as much as anything else. I mean, if any of you have a lot of shares vested in VHS or in Farriers, I can't help you. The expectation that not all industry stays stable and secure is part and parcel of what we face. What makes that unusual and interesting for us to study as the stimulus for why enterprises need to be adaptive and think differently is that in the same quarter that these two companies went bankrupt, a 35-person company that was 18 months old, whose core business was to make Kodak look like Polaroid, Instagram, got bought for $1 billion. Okay? If we really want to understand what is happening and why we have to adapt, why we have to look for a new reality, where we have to think differently, that example of saying that Kodak and Polaroid failed, yet some company that took learning from Kodak and from Polaroid and could leverage itself to being $1 billion worth. I put it to you that the reason why they did it was that Kodak knew everything about their product and something about their customer. Instagram knew everything about their customer, and their customers knew everything about their customers. Okay? This nesting of relationships where customers could connect with each other was a core driver in the value, because the people today want to be participative. I was described by John as a retired hippie. I described myself as that. I have a big collection of vinyl. I listen to valve amplifiers. But when I show my children what I have, and they listen to a lot of the music I listen to, thank God. But they would tell me, Dad, I don't want to do that because I can't share it. So for them, part of the joy of listening to music, for watching a film, for reading anything, for doing anything, is that ability to share and to get active feedback from others, to get peer respect and recognition. And these are not bad things to do, right? It's not even a judgment call. They're saying they're different things to do. And those differences become a critical part of the change that has taken place. Now, this change is important, I think, for AMP because everything I've heard about this organization, what this week is about, what I heard Craig Dunn speak about, saying you believe in being a learning organization. Right? And you can think of the first part of my talk to saying it's about the importance of learning being a critical component of responding to this environment. Why is that? If I speak to the people at the Deloitte Center for the Edge, John Seeley Brown, John Hagel, Lang Davison, they use a term called the big shift. And what the big shift is actually the outcome of 60, 70 years worth of two critical things happening. A digital infrastructure rollout, which we can see more with Moore's law and Metcalfe's law, the fact that it is now within our lifetime and our imagination that every single person on earth will be connected, and will be connected by an affordable smart mobile device. I never thought that about mainframes or about mid-range or even about PCs, but it's within our grasp to believe, okay? In the West, maybe even our pets will have laptops, iPads, who knows? But the premise that I'm coming to is that that change has taken place of a transformational rollout of digital infrastructure. At the same time, public policy shifts have meant that human capital and financial capital are able to move across borders and regroup in ways that we've never been able to imagine before. And these two things, the facility for capital of different types to be able to move borders, disaggregate, reaggregate, almost on demand, and the ability for all this to be supported by ubiquitous, always-on, affordable compute power and connectivity, changes the way people think and behave. And the reason why we have to build adaptive platforms is that you need to be able to respond to that type of change. Now, I want to articulate for the second part of my talk what this change is about, why learning is important. One way of looking at what happened with a Kodak or a Polaroid is that they believed in stocks. They believed that you could scale up by having built an experience, canned that experience, and then scaled up from it. Companies used to be collections of experiences with the ability to scale. Now a company is no longer as good at what it used to be able to do. It's as good as what it can do the next day. Learning and adapting has become part and parcel of the need for a company to even exist. Historically, for the last 600 years, ever since we understood even any context of joint stock companies, you could reduce a company into saying it is a hierarchy of product and of customer. And we could associate customers or products with costs and with revenues. And we had this little thing called overheads. I'm deeply oversimplifying, but that's what companies were. Now, companies are networks of relationship and capability. It has become much more important to understand what capabilities we have and how we can reconfigure those capabilities for whatever the market needs. Because you need to be able to move at that pace of the market and to be able to recognize where the relationships stand. This relationship aspect is important. If you look at the winners over the last decade, whether if you think of a Google, an Amazon, an eBay, a Flickr, a YouTube, a Facebook as winners, okay? At least, even if you want to get pedantic about it, at least they're good examples of leaders of a new generation of companies. Every one of them exists because customers trusted them to look after something, and they used that something to create more value. Anyone can build another auction site, but you can't get 200 million ratings overnight. Anyone can build another bookstore. You can't get 9 million reviews overnight. Anyone can build another search engine, but you can't get 3 billion search terms overnight. So these companies create value by looking after what their customers do. Hello, does this sort of ring a bell with you guys? Right? This 21st century set of companies, their primary value is in getting people to trust them, to keep something with them, and then to be able to share that something. Okay? That's quite important. I mean, I thought a couple of nights ago I had the privilege of having dinner one floor up. And I was looking at some of the history and said, Australian mutual province. Mutual, interesting. Okay? Maybe the word mutual is going to have even more interest to you at the end of this talk than at the beginning. And if it does, then I will have succeeded in something. Okay, the listening ability that we need to have because we have an empowered group of people with this infrastructure that is digital is important for reasons that not everyone really appreciates. Historically, we used to listen to customers only in the past tense. Okay? A customer existed when a transaction was complete. The industry I joined was called transaction processing because that's all we did. We processed transactions. The cost of recording what a customer did was really high. So large enterprises who had the ability to build, to connect their tills or to build inbound call centers or to have sophisticated ATMs or kiosks, right? It's only those that actually collected any information about the transaction to do with their customer. Most enterprises, which were small, fundamentally produced a till receipt that you could make no sense of. You could barely read. It was not connected to anything else in sight, didn't drive any part of inventory, didn't have any relationship with the customer, no frequent flyer points, no nothing. Okay? It was only the large enterprise who could afford to do that. Now, over time, that has changed. But all that we did was listen to the past. Then, shock horror, customers started investing in their own infrastructure to record what they did. And they called it the mobile phone. And what did they do with it? They started saying, I've just had breakfast, I've just checked in here, I've just gone to the loo. Too much information. Okay? And lots of us, particularly the more conservative amongst us, said, what a complete waste of time this is. But actually, like the mappers of the 16th and 17th century, the navigators who set out a physical map, Columbus went to America thinking it was India. Okay, he got it slightly wrong in terms of the navigation, but maps in those days were completely different and much less accurate than the maps we have today. Digital maps have been created by these people who've been checking in everywhere, labeling GPS locations, allowing context and learning to be associated with those locations. Right? A tweet today is now part of a very formal discipline called an activity stream, where you have auto-geolocated, auto-date and time-stamped, identity-verified discussions with compressed URLs containing the context that's being spoken, and in all probability, the use of hashtags to create a semantic labeling, a taxonomy of what is being spoken. Very rich communication in 140 characters, but it's taken years to evolve. So the customer voice moved from the past transactions to the present activities. But even better, as the activity streams have evolved today, customers are speaking in the future. Their intent is being signaled. I'd like to buy an iPhone 5. Have they solved the mapping problem? I'm thinking of going on holiday to Greece. Is the political situation stable enough for me to go there? Right? Or, if you don't fix my broadband service, I'm changing supplier tomorrow. Okay? Conditional intent. The point is, customers now have a voice in past, present, and future. They're sharing that voice with you, whether you want to hear it or not. And they're not sharing it in the natural places, the historical broadcast hierarchical mentalities where companies told their customers what to do, and preferably manage their products. Because you see, product managing is much easier than customer managing. Products don't talk back, products don't complain. You can predict what products do because you control and own them. Customers are slightly messier. Okay? If you're going to engage with customers, now you have to realize customers have moved. They are no longer within the walled gardens. It is nearly 5 years since the volume of traffic in social networks has exceeded that of email. They're using their own devices, they're using their own time, they're in their own place. You don't even own your brand anymore because that brand, it can be supported and attacked at will by your customers and your customers' customers and their friends and their relatives. There's been a huge shift in how engagement with the customer is taking place because the customer has decided they're part of it. Okay? Unless you are actually listening to what customers are saying, you're not going to be able to manage to even survive as an institution. None of this should really worry you, because there is enough within your culture and your history and your background to saying you can be adaptive, you're used to being collaborative, you are a learning organization, and you are a listening organization. But I need to articulate this in this form and shape to understand why you have to build platforms the way you need to build platforms. Now, historically, when we built systems, we learned of the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, the theory of the firm. A lot of the learnings were established actually between two world wars. The Fordism and Taylorism was brought to a Ronald Coase level of understanding, where transaction costs ruled and deep vertical integration was the way we built organizations. And we never changed from that to saying deep vertical integration is the way we're going to build companies, that we're going to build systems, we're going to build architectures. And the objective of deep vertical integration was to reduce unit costs, because you could build models like private equity or outsourcing regularly do by saying that if you can standardize the hell out of something and then you can keep adding volume, you're going to drop the price. And you use different ways of tariffing up the cost of change in order to achieve those goals. And that was all fine and dandy for decades. There's one minor problem today. It's very hard to find a market that is steady state. So now the cost of change is militant. The cost of change is what rules rather than unit cost alone. Not that unit costs aren't important, but unit costs have to be looked at in the context of the cost of change. Because every market is now operating at a pace that is far faster than we have ever imagined before. Okay? The iPhone is a 2007 invention. The iPad is a 2010 invention. Some of the things that are changing our lives haven't even got to the 5-year-old stage yet. Okay? It's amazing the kind of shifts that are taking place in our lifetime, in our ways. The web is barely 20 years old, right? 23. With that kind of understanding, being able to build systems that are able to respond to the pace of the market becomes really important. That are capable of listening to what the customer says are really important. That are able to take advantage of the technology shifts that are taking place, which are primarily to do with openness, to do with the cloud, to do with mobility. Right? These are the characteristics that drive what a platform should look like. The question then becomes, how do you build a platform that is able to operate at the pace of the market? Because if you operate slower than the market, you're going to die. And I put it to you that if the first theme I want to talk about was learning, and the second theme I want to talk about was listening, the third theme I would like to end this with before I come to some examples is liberating. Okay? The new generations are interested in being participative, in engaging, in being part of things. It's not it's two-way. It's interactive. Right? Sharing has become part of their culture. They make recommendations about products and services. If one of the big challenges that face any a financial sector, as much in wealth management as in insurance for me, is getting the right touch points with the customer, right? This conference is called Amplify. The amplification of touch points takes place so vividly when you have a friend recommend to another, I bought this because. And it doesn't start with the because. It actually starts with the sharing of I bought this. Just that very statement has someone else ask, why did you do that? And there begins amplification of touch points, which is one of the things you want to be able to do. So social is actually a route for you to be able to touch many more customers by being able to amplify the signal of every single interaction your customers have with you, provided you give them that choice. Which is leading me to what this third piece is on liberate. If you want to operate at the pace of the market, why don't you become the market? Okay? How do you become the market? By allowing your customers, your trading partners, your supply chain, your distributors, your agents, I'm just using the terms in general, but you are much more to do with agent-type structures. Allow them to build services on top of you, because they will know more about building local services than you would. They can do it faster because it creates small pieces loosely joined, loose coupling, high cohesion. The idea that failures get localized and gains can get socialized, because as soon as you see something work, you can start moving that around to other locations, other regions, other product sets. But that requires you to rethink how you build a platform. The platform's got to be open. The platform's got to have APIs. It's got to support mobile first. It's got to be able to be worked on. Right? One of my favorite commentators and authors, a guy called David Weinberger, said, the smartest person in the room is the room. Okay? You have the ability to get the smarts of your virtual room, of your entire marketplace, the people you touch in every shape or form, by being able to sort of liberate your structures. And especially for a company with mutual roots, the idea of mutualizing becomes important. Okay? Already now in parts of Germany, in parts of Holland, I'm hearing tales of Facebook groups being formed to buy particularly non-life insurance, motor or house, to saying, there are 50 of us, we're going to join up together, we know each other, and we will pay a much smaller rate to be able to self-insure than we would by going to an insurance company. So a level of disintermediation is taking place because these connected human beings who have trust relationships with each other are able to make calls. And the response of insurance companies has been to say, okay, you know something? There is a cost and a pain and an administrative process to be able to collect all the premia and to pay out claims. We've been doing that for 100 years. Would you like to use our framework for you to put your own group in? So now the guys who've run away are building services on top of existing infrastructures because they've been allowed to, and coming back into the fold as a result. We have P2P payments. We have use of crowdsource in investment research. We've got P2P in lending. We've got P2P in credit scoring. The amount of change that is taking place in various parts of the financial industry, because of the fact that individuals are not just connected to their companies, but to each other, okay? That is both the promise as well as the threat. As an organization, as a group, especially since you come from mutual roots, you can very easily build services that allow people to create their own mutual groups using you. It takes courage to have to make that kind of change. But the choice that you have is whether you're going to be Instagram or whether you want to be Kodak. Okay? That choice is available to all of us. The kind of platforms that have to be built are platforms that recognize the dramatic changes that have taken place that are not age-related, because I know 55, 60-year-old people who are as familiar with the technologies and as free with the changing environment as I know 16 or 17-year-olds. Don't make the mistake of saying this is an age-based divide. It really isn't. It's actually to do with your comfort zone. But what is very, very clear is that sharing is at the heart of it. You see, when I was a kid, I could take friends home and say, Mom, I've got 3 friends for dinner. And a few hours later, magically, dinner would be served, sometimes a few minutes later. I never knew what actually took place in the kitchen for that to happen, but it happened. Then I came to England, I got married. I did the same thing before the mobile phone with my wife. Took some friends home when we were expecting people for dinner. And then she looked at me and said, we're having steak today. How am I going to serve them? Okay? And I realized that not all things were designed to be shared. Okay? In order for open platforms to have this liberating effect, you need to design to share. In order to get the effective amplification of everything you do, you have to design to share. So I close with just those 3 words. You need to be able to be a learning organization. You are already, so that's not difficult. But you're going to have to learn faster and harder. You need to be a listening organization, and you already are. But understand that the people you're listening to have moved, and the tools they use to speak have changed. The voice they're speaking in have changed. You need to be a liberating organization, something that should be very relevant to your core and your roots. And no regulator would ever worry about what you do if what you start with is a premise of empowering your customer. Because regulators are primarily there to protect the customer. right? There is systemic risk cover, etc., but that's something you're already very good at. It's the question of how you're going to be able to bring in a whole new class of customer and to take the customers you have today, to learn, to have them connect with each other, recommend with each other, amplify the touch points, and build services that you could not have imagined. Thank you for your time.